Hello, everybody. This is the Great Joanna speaking. Let's go. Let's go live one more time. Uh, I thought of some things to talk about. As usual, I will do my. This is Thursday, so I'm doing my Thursday evening live show, live stream. TikTok gave me a flare, so I can get more viewers. Apparently, I might use that as soon as I get some people in. So, let's start with the breaking news. The defense minister of the state of Isabel in the Middle East, Isabel is not the real word I want to say. It's the other one that sounds like Isabel. Israel Katz, that's his name. The guy is named that way. He posted on Twitter X, the defense minister, that he wants to deport all people from Gaza to countries that will accept them. Guess which countries will have to accept them? It's not that the people of these countries want to accept yet another million immigrants from a Muslim place, but rather that we will have to. It's going to be the Netherlands and England. How do I know that? Because the Netherlands and England are the two countries that have vowed to build over 1 million new homes in the next few years. 1 million in the Netherlands and 1.3 million in England. Those homes are not meant for our descendants, our children, our people. They are meant for housing migrants from Gaza. Israel is going to displace the Palestinians and drop them off in the Netherlands and England. And even Japan, some high-profile politicians in Japan said they wanted to accept Palestinians. That's because Japan is also a U.S. colony. Zogged. Right, so let's talk about these things and more. Let's talk about also the possibility for our resistance. I've been reading from the book The Forest Passage by one of my favorite authors, or probably the favorite author, Ernst Jünger. I've mentioned him many times now. And The Forest Passage explains how we can form a rebellion. I mentioned it already today on my TikTok channel, that the sort of outspoken right-wing people on this app, like Based Blondie or Groyer Nationalist, and many others that I can't name all of them off the top of my head. They are the outspoken elite. They are the forest rebels whose wolfish nature poses a threat to authority. Because if the wolves among us succeed in transferring their wolfish nature, their qualities, onto the sheeple, the normies, then we turn the sheep herd into a wolf pack by transferring our qualities onto the masses. This is the greatest nightmare of every ruling class, is that when those few people, they're called the forest rebels. I'll explain why they're called forest rebels in a minute. The forest rebels who still know what freedom is. The forest rebels who are the ones unafraid of facing death, like, Dionysus or Christ. In the face of the end, they remained their true selves. Perhaps even like Richard Russell, the Sky King. I'm not advocating suicide. I am advocating, however, overcoming your fear of death and starting to live the life that you really want to live, even if that means doing a barrel roll in a plane you hijacked. Hold on. As usual, I get a lot of trolls in my account, and almost all of them are Dutch. So I just instantly block those ones, if you don't mind me. Yeah, the man speaking the truth. So, I will make this interactive episode. So it's live. It's not rehearsed. I do not have a script. What I do have is often very interesting thoughts to give you, and I will bounce it off of your questions and your remarks if they are respectful, obviously. Right? So, for starters, I'm going to take a sip of water. Someone asked me today if they could donate to me. They wanted to donate with Cash App, but I live in a country that doesn't support Cash App. So you can reach me on my PayPal /thejmk. or on my buymeacoffee.com/JohannesMK. There you can drop me some interesting funds. I don't have a personal need for funds. If I would get funding, it's basically so I can start building out the movement. So let's talk about that too. I was thinking of the following. In a country like the Netherlands, for example, would you want to start yet another party, knowing that we already have 50 or so? They're not all in parliament, but we have many political parties vying for a few seats in the parliament of 150. And so one approach is you start a new political party and then you do the election thing and you try to get your people in the seats. Maybe you get 3, right? At first you win 3 seats if you're successful, if you're lucky, right? And then maybe if we work hard for 20 years, 30 years, then one day we will be the biggest party and then we will supply the prime minister and we will rule the country. Are you kidding me? We don't have 30 years. And the established parties will never allow you to win elections anyway, right? So here's another mode of thought, another opportunity. In a country like the Netherlands, we have a lot of municipalities and provinces, right? And at the local level, we also have elections, political elections. My idea was this. We start a political party that by default will never participate in the national elections and instead will only participate in local elections. So you put all your effort into getting your people into the local colleges, the local communities, right? The local, how do you call it? It's not called a parliament, I suppose. It's a municipality has a college, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm Dutch, right? So I don't know all the words in English, right? And doing it that way, what you do is you put your people in these municipalities and you're going to do only one thing. You're going to vote against every national policy. The idea is, the strategy is then through your control of the local politics, you will then make the implementation of the national plan impossible by continuously, systematically voting against anything coming out of the capital, or in this case, in the Netherlands, The Hague. The Hague is our political center, but it's not our official capital. Amsterdam is officially the capital of the Netherlands. So what we're going to do is, instead of participating in the general national elections and trying to win power, we're going to do the exact opposite and participate only in local elections in order to undermine the power of the nation that we believe is corrupt, that we no longer want to be a part of, right? TikTok gave me a flare feature. Let's see if that actually works or not. I'm supposed to click on it. Oh, here it is. Flare, tier 2. You use a flare. Use a flare to reach more potential viewers. This flare will be effective for 30 minutes. The flare will expire. Okay, use. I wonder if this is going to have any effect in the terms of users. I don't really believe it. Thoughts on Dr. Duke? Duke who? Be more specific, you know? So I can watch your comments in here. You're a white American conservative, really? Are you a value conservative, or are you somebody who actually wants to conserve their people? Right? What would you think if thousands of us moved into the Netherlands? You mean that's fine, I suppose. Bring your families, right? We need soldiers and warriors to, protect our people over here. By the way, my theory of what's going to happen between the USA and Europe may be this. I read somewhere in some intellectual magazine that the children of a mother civilization, meaning the colonial offshoots of the mother civilization, never outlive the mother civilization. So the idea is that Europe has colonial offshoots, the USA, of course, notably, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and several other places. The idea is that none of these places will outlast Europe, also implying that if Europe dies, all these other places will also die. Because you need to imagine a strawberry plant. A strawberry plant can clone itself by branching off and then into the soil, right? And so if the mother plant dies, the clones, right, the children also die. in order to prevent this, my belief is that we must secure European culture and civilization. And we do this by renewing ourselves, by understanding that the technocratic civilization, now represented by the USA very, very much, is in essence infertile in the long term. Whereas the European culture can be imagined as a forest in which there's always new seeds that can grow into something new. So the renewal will always come from Europe, whereas the offshoots may have more difficulty doing so. This has nothing to do with who's most powerful. Clearly the USA is most powerful. They have the best army, right? They've got the most money. They've got the most aggressive foreign policy. But none of that matters in the end if you can't renew yourself, meaning if you cannot give birth to a new version of yourself, especially considering that the United States now has a very large influx of immigrants, maybe just 200 million white people left or so. Europe still has, of any geographic center, Europe now still has the most white people in it. We have the highest density of white people. We also have the most. We have 700 million white people living in the European continent. If you include Belarus and if you would even include Western Russia, you're getting close to 800 million, right? And so our people live here, and we will continue to live here for the same reason that most Indian people will never leave India and most Nigerians will never leave Nigeria, although they could send millions of their people to our places to, say, flood our cities, right? And perhaps try to colonize us through the womb by giving birth to more children. But that still means the focus is on Europe. So I'm going to try to read your comments. I always see that there's a lot of comments and I can't keep up with everything. David Duke, he said something like, he believed that the reason the Jehuden hate us because we're their competitors. But I actually have a very interesting, obscure theory for you here to counter that narrative. I believe that in the heyday of the Roman Empire, before the collapse, Rome was ruled by a merchant class. They were building their globalism. Rome was trading with India already. They were sailing, they controlled the whole Mediterranean, and they were already sailing to India, or at least overland perhaps. They were doing overland trade with India. And with Persia and so on and so forth, with North Africa, all right? So they were building the foundation for their globalist empire. And then those goddamn Neanderthal, Germanics, and Celtics in the north put an end to those dreams of Roman eternal expansion. We destroyed Rome, for example, at the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, when the Germanic tribes united in Western Germany in the Teutoburg Forest, and we slaughtered 3 Roman legions there, sending them packing. That was the end of Rome's colonial expansion northward. They never got close to colonizing Northern Europe. It's the reason why Germans still speak German today rather than a Latinized version of German, such as English, such as French. All right. Well, French is not German, Latinized German. French is Latinized Celtic. But the idea here is that we white people destroyed their Roman Empire, and that's the real reason why Jews hate us, because we destroyed their Rome, their merchant empire, so to speak. All right, I see a lot of comments here. I can't comment to everything, but we'll see. Why would you be for race mixing? What's the point of that even? So you once talked about the Eritrean riot in The Hague, right? That was a long time ago. Why do you bring this up? That's ancient history. Haven't you got anything new to tell us? So we're progressing our movement here. Europe will have to prepare for future war against Africa. Yes, I believe Africans may want to go to war with Europe. When you arm Nigerians, which is what Britain is doing, who are they going to fight? Well, talk about African resources. There's one thing we never stole. We never stole your intelligence. So go and work on that, okay? Okay. Do you respect Slavic nations as much as other Europeans? I definitely respect the Orthodox Christian Slavic people because they retain some really hardcore mentality that we're going to need to borrow in the future. If only the Catholics and the Protestants could learn how to be tough like the Orthodox Slavic Christians. So, mentioning this, I started this live stream talking about that book, The Forest Passage. I've mentioned it many times, by Ernst Jünger, the German World War I hero who turned a philosopher. He was a poet and a philosopher. And in The Forest Passage, there's a cryptic message there. It makes a distinction between the sea, the ship at sea, and the rebel in the forest. Can you try to picture this? Can you picture a ship at sea and the rebel hiding in the forest? The sea is sterile. You can't grow food on the ocean technically, right? Maybe with modern technology, but then you still need the technology. Whereas in a forest, you always have seeds that rise up, new trees, new plants, new fruits, and so on, right? So the soil, the forest soil, the point is the forest soil is extremely fertile. The sea, for us humans, is not really fertile. We can't grow much on water, on salt water, right? So the idea is the sea is like a desert, right? And the forest is where all the new energy comes from. Now, Ernst Jünger explains in a cryptic message that the Germans, he wrote this book in 1951, he says that the Germans and the Russians, the Slavic Russians and the Germanic Germans, have a similar experience of dwelling in the forests. It is from the forests of Germany and the forests of Russia, or basically the forests of Western Eurasia, where new culture, new strength, new ideas, new creativity will ultimately come from. And that means the renewal, I also mentioned this already, the renewal we seek for our people will come from Europe, will come from Western Russia, possibly in combination, because Ernst Jünger writes in this cryptic message, he says that Germans and Russians will have a lot to talk to each other about because they have similar experiences against basically the oceanic empire of the Anglo-Americans who rule the seas. Like Britannia rules the waves. There's a whole song about Britannia ruling the waves. The problem with that is that the sea isn't fertile. It is the domain of a civilization that controls a lot using technology, but is not able to renew itself anymore. Whereas the renewal will come, and it will come from the Black Forest, the Teutoburg Forest, like the forests of Russia, right? I'm going to always block people who are who say things like I'm a propagandist, but they don't explain why, right? It's like people who call me a racist, but they never call me a liar. So that's the problem. I've noticed that Dutch people are very unintelligent. Like here someone says, oh, I talk about English language books. No, it's a German book, by the way. It's like, oh, you're against globalism, but you read German books. Like, don't you understand that different nations can work together against globalism, and then we would still then just be our nations, because we're not going to mix and fuse. We're going to simply stand up for ourselves. Like a lot of people just don't get it. And I noticed that English language, the international English speaking crowd never sounds that stupid. Dutch people have an IQ problem. Like the whole thing that they say that white Dutch people have an IQ of 102 or something on average. I think it's 80. They're lying. There's something not true about the results of this. Yeah, I speak German. Of course I speak German. Ich sprich Deutsch. Was ist los? 1, 2 Polizei. Of course I speak German. I've been reading German books for 20 years or so now. And so I read Schopenhauer, I read Nietzsche, I read them all in German, Heidegger too, right? Ernst Jünger a lot, and a ton of other books that I've read, Goethe, bits and pieces of Goethe. 3, 4, Brigadier, 5, 6, Alte Keks. That was an old house song, right? How do you learn new languages? Nowadays, for example, jag har lärt mig lite svenska. I tried teaching myself a bit Swedish. I just started on Duolingo, but then I also started reading the news. It's very important that you can start with something like Duolingo or anything else. Just start with something, but then start reading the news and start listening to their music. Especially, every country has catchy music, right? And so then I start listening to Swedish music, and you pick the songs you like, the ones that stick in your head. And then after a while, you start to hear what they're saying. And that's truly amazing when you're learning a new language and all of a sudden you understand the chorus of a Swedish song that you like. And now you know what it's about. And that's how you really learn. So you always have to do the language study on Duolingo. I have Duolingo. And then combine it with pop music, combine it with other things, the news or books you like to read. 7, 8, gute Nacht. Yeah. Maybe our Dutch IQ bell curve is more spread out with a lower average than they say. Yeah. What do you think? If you're not Dutch, what's your experience with Dutch people? Do you find them loud and stupid? The white ones, right? I'm talking just about the white ones. Loud and stupid, right? A lot of them are loud and stupid. Or they shouldn't be allowed to even use TikTok. It's just weird. It's weird that it's simply something I always keep observing over and over again. The Dutch people in my comments are just less intelligent on average, right? Most of the really stupid comments come from them, whereas the international English-speaking crowd seems to be either more tolerant of new ideas, they're more easily able to grasp something new and say, okay, this is interesting, right? They don't put you down for presenting a new idea. So that's the difference, really. It's simply true. I know it's weird. Yeah. I suppose you can. I don't think you can learn to speak Italian fluently in 3 weeks. I think no one can do that, but you can definitely get the sound and enough phrases in, right, to be able to fake it, right? But I think the problem with learning a language is to truly speak a new language, you need to learn about 20,000 words to sound educated, 12,000 words to sound uneducated. So that's a lot of words. Even if you would learn 10 a day or 50 a day, that could take you a year to really accumulate the vocabulary, right? You listen to my podcast frequently. Yeah, thank you very much. I intend to do the English podcast like this one, the live streams. I'll do them weekly, definitely weekly on Thursdays in the evenings. Right. We definitely have an arrogant midwit problem in the Netherlands, from my experience. I think part of the problem with the Netherlands is we are supposed to be this very highly educated population, but a lot of people have been educated above their level, hence the name midwit, I suppose, right? A midwit is somebody who has a university degree, but is actually supposed to be a window cleaner. And so you get this mismatch between what they are able to understand and what they are fed in terms of education, right? Anyway, I never read your glaze. All right, well, yeah. The Netherlands is an overeducated nation, and it brings forth its own kinds of problems. There's just a mismatch between people in power and their capability. It's just odd, right? Yeah. Yeah, I always call it the IQ 102 supremacy, because they're 2% smarter than everybody else, than the average, right? 2% more. They think they're geniuses, right? Thinking and doing are hugely separate, yeah. I noticed that in order to be successful in life, what it often comes down to is to refine your motor skills in that field, even including speaking. For example, a successful ice hockey player, what do they really do? Well, they're fast, they're talented, right? They can do their tricks on skates, but ultimately it's about having the very refined motor skills to shoot the puck right in that narrow area between the goalie and the net, right? So it's all about refining your motor skills to a point where you reduce failure to minimum. And this requires you also to learn about all the different ways of doing something wrong. That's why everybody, if you want to learn to play the trumpet, for example, everybody has to start by doing everything wrong, and then you narrow down the things that work, and then you refine that. You get better at your motor skills, your facial muscles, and the way you breathe and the way you blow air and so on. That's how you get better at the trumpet or anything you do. It's all about, so wild aggression leads to failure, but controlled or channeled aggression toward success, which is success is always a narrow target. Channeled aggression toward that narrow target is how you become more successful in life. And of course, it makes sense then to get good at something. It could take you 10 years, right? It could take you 10 years to develop the skill and the knowledge to even understand what the target is, and then to refine your whole being toward that goal, right? So that's how it's done. Hold on. I see a lot of weird spam comments here. Right. I learned that from Wikipedia that polar bears are carnivores. They're the largest land-based carnivorous animals. They eat only meat, almost only meat. And the brown and the black bears, they eat mostly vegetation. Yeah. Of course, it's a metaphor for something else, right? The black and the brown bears, they hibernate. The polar bears don't hibernate. They stay awake. They stay awake all year round, always active, always working. That's when they talk to us about, the Protestant work ethic or the Catholic work ethic, and how come migrants coming in, we never say they have a work ethic. Why is that? Why don't we say that the Pakistani in England have a work ethic? Why don't we ever say that black people have a work ethic? When we speak of work ethic, we mean Protestants and Catholics, right? So, like the polar bears, we had to work in the past. And did you know that it was like this in Germany in the past? There was no real central heating in the cities. It was cold. It was always cold. So you had to eat a high energy diet. In Germany, this means, look at the German menu, the traditional menu today. What do they eat? They eat pork knuckle, which has a lot of fat on it. Pork knuckle, and they eat raw meat, and they eat potatoes that give them energy, right? So they eat a high energy dish because they need that fuel to keep moving outside, because the workers working outside in the past, they were always working in the cold, right? They didn't have heaters or something, electric heaters the way we do now. They were always cold outside, so they needed to eat a lot of energy and then keep busy, keep moving your body to stay warm, right? Like the polar bear, who always has to keep active, right, to stay warm, stay hunting, right? In Spain, they hibernate. Yeah. Funny is that, isn't it? Yeah. And the Inuit Eskimo, yeah, true. Okay, yeah. I seen a very interesting documentary about the Inuit, where they indeed they eat raw liver because it's tasty and very nutritious and warm, right? And they drink blood, right? Meat and the organs, yeah. Yeah, potatoes are from South America. What's your point? They were introduced to Europe in the 1500s, so it was still very cold in the winters in 1500s. Imagine how bad it was before that. Imagine what the Germans had to eat. They had to eat a lot of dairy and meat to get the high protein in. The same, that yogurt, Skyr, SKYR from Iceland? It's a popular brand in the Netherlands now as well. That yogurt contains high protein. And why do you need protein? Protein is a building block for muscle. Why would you need it, so much of it? Well, you're destroying your muscle in the cold, working so hard. So you need a lot of protein. Right? Nobody really cares about your potatoes, man. This isn't about the fucking potatoes. This is about Germans having to eat a high energy diet to keep warm. No, polar bear habitats are not under threat. The polar bear population actually grew all this time. They were showing you images of dying polar bears, and it turns out they're just fucking fine. Their population increased. So, but of course, black and brown bears will always just stay lazy. So, why are you so eloquent? So, I started speaking 5 years ago in 2019, or almost more than 5 years ago. In the summer of 2019, I started just before COVID. Before that, I had always been writing a lot. I was a writer. I wrote books. I wrote blog posts and newsletters. And then I decided, okay, I want to start speaking well. It was one of my goals in life to be a proper speaker, right? Maybe not the greatest in the world, right? But I wanted to be the best speaker I could be, right? And so I achieved that by starting practicing. First, I wrote down my speeches. and I started going over them. I would do my speech and record myself reading, basically reading off of a printed script. Then, of course, I wanted to do more speaking on the fly, and I tried to force myself to speak for 30 minutes or so. And I actually, in the Netherlands, I couldn't really find a place at the time where I could just speak at a normal volume without harassing my neighbors, for example. So I hopped on my mountain bike, I rode into the forest. And I started, I had a voice recorder with me, and I started just speaking. And at first it came out like da 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 da, and then I had nothing to say, blank stare. My brain was almost empty, and I knew I had a lot to say. I just didn't learn yet how to turn my thoughts, my images that I see in my mind, how to turn it into words in a fluent manner, in a way that interests people, right? But I got better and better at it. Sometimes I succeeded in recording myself speaking about something very interesting in a good way for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? And that became 30 minutes, and then an hour, right? And then I wanted to do short bursts, like TikTok videos. So I got onto TikTok maybe 3 years ago or so. At first I was doing these longer speeches, narrations almost on YouTube for my podcast, the Johannes Tyrannus podcast. And then I switched to doing TikTok videos because I wanted to practice speaking my mind off of the, how do you call it, off the cuff, or meaning without anything prepared, no script, right? Just having an idea of what I want to talk about, and then just basically think and speak at the same time and get the words out right anyway, right? And turns out that's a skill. You learn it by practicing more and more and more and more. Then just about 1.5 years ago, I also started doing live streams. My first live stream, all I got was negative comments. So you also have to deal with the feedback. This can be very negative. I started doing live streams because I wanted to practice speaking for a full hour on the fly, unscripted, right? So you see how that went. It was quite a long 5-year journey for me to go from reading my prepared speeches to being able to do these live streams in 5 years. So I do imagine that 5 years from now, I should be a very, very good public speaker, because I want to move from the live streams. I want to move into the real world now and do public speeches, or speeches before crowds, really, where I really want to start rallying people, right? I want to, in a larger room, here I'm sitting in a small room with a microphone, but in a larger room, I might be able to use more strength in my voice. I could be louder. I could be a bit more, I could start gesticulating with my hands more, right? And I could basically try to really express the energy that I always feel in myself. I think what sets me apart is I'm very restless, and I feel a lot of force in myself, way more than other people have. And I'm not allowed to let it out most of the time. I have my foot on the brake. That's how it feels. And I want to be able to put my foot on the gas pedal for once in a while. And I think I'm going to do that by speaking, right? You seem like a very confident speaker. You're a pro, man. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's flattery. Yeah, it's very flattering. Thank you very much, Bob. I do work on it every day, right? I do little TikTok speeches almost every day. So you can't really speak about anything you haven't already thought of first. You need to first start thinking about this topic and maybe do a little research. And then there comes a point in the day where, like a puzzle, the pieces fit together and you see the big picture. Now I've got something to talk about, because now I can explain people what I've seen or what I've understood, right? And it's not always about explaining. You should know that explaining things is different from persuading people to believe something. So persuasion and explanation are two totally different things. Have you tried painting? Actually, I started drawing. Should I show you now? My drawings are not so good. Well, though, maybe. Hold on. Now that you mentioned painting, I took drawing lessons. Okay, this may look a bit silly, but I took drawing lessons. So that's a fox. And here's an owl. All right, I'm very proud of myself. No, I took drawing lessons to learn to draw better, because the reason is I have very wild, explosive dreams, and my dreams have so much imagery in them. It's like HD quality in my head, and I want to be able to learn to draw the dreams that I see at night and put them on paper. So that's why I took some drawing lessons, and I'm practicing, and eventually I'll get to the point where I'll start drawing paintings or so, right? I didn't quite want to start painting for real yet. I'm just gonna stick to these pencils. They're oil-based pencils, so it has somewhat the quality of a painting, but not really. It's still a pencil, of course, but you know. This is my English language channel, so I don't speak Dutch here. If you ended up on this channel, you should know that I don't speak Dutch here. I'm Dutch. Yeah, you also dream very vividly, right? They feel like surreal memories from real life. I started recording most my dreams in 2017. I have a little dream diary on my computer. I don't often remember a dream. Rarely do I really remember a dream. But when I do remember one, I wake up with it and it's still in my mind, right? Very hazy. And it's in that moment that I grab my phone, open my notes, and I write down the dream as best as I can remember, as quickly as possible, to get as much of the imagery in. And my dreams have a storyline, but usually I can only remember half of it. And in most cases, I don't understand the purpose or like the goal of the dream. It's completely missing, but I can only remember scenes from the dream that may have been part of a bigger story. But still, sometimes I succeed at catching a full dream from start to finish with the purpose and all, and the dialogue even. Sometimes there's dialogue, right? And I can write down the dialogue I get from my dreams, and I start analyzing my dreams, and it's wild. I don't think I should tell people. This is very private, but it makes a lot of sense for me to start analyzing my dreams, because I realize there's a lot of dreams that are called helping dreams. Helper dreams help you process something or understand something, right? But then there's also precognitive dreams, dreams that show you something that will happen in the future. And these things freak me out because they really do happen. And that's how I learned to recognize, oh, I dreamt this about this woman, and 4 days later, that really happened, right? That's really freaky. Like I wrote it down, right? I wrote it down, I dated it, and then 4 days later, that which I dreamt about really happened. It's like, wow, that's so freakish. Then I start to realize, wow, dreams do tell us something about the future. Some dreams do. So that's something to keep in mind, right? The amount of dreams you have, yeah, it might. Do I feel rested in the morning? No. I sleep well. I do sleep normal hours, no problem. But I wake up, with pain in my brain, basically. Right. I'm not very happy in the morning. I suppose intellectually, I'm like an evening person. Yeah. In the mornings, it's all like stone on stone grinding, and then later in the day, it becomes more fluid, more happy. You dreamed about someone you know ending up in the hospital, and it happened shortly after. See, those are the precognitive dreams. So there's a theory behind how that's even possible. If you're into the occult, you want to know a bit more about it. It's that, imagine that the reality we perceive is really behind the scenes. It's like a network where you can send vibes or energies through across the network. You as a person are a node in the network. So wherever these pathways cross, that's an individual there. And you can receive and transmit. And sometimes you can receive information of things that is already going to happen, right? And those would be your dreams about the future, where you receive information about something that is going to be happening anyway. So you can dive into this. There's a lot of books about this where you can learn more about this. Your dreams are weird now and memorable, right? You never dreamt this much before. That's interesting. I would, if you have a lot of dreams that you remember, I would definitely write them down and analyze them, but probably keep them to yourself. It's private. It tells you something about yourself. All right. But still, right? Yeah, I rise with the sun, kind of, yeah. It's not really the burdens of yesterday that I suffer. It's more that my dreams are so wild. I wake up, feeling aggressive or exhausted because of the dream. So I've been speaking to you for about 40 minutes. As usual, I will try to do a whole hour, and I try to keep it interactive with you. Today I set up my my webcam is now supposed to be 60 frames per second, but I don't know if it really makes a big difference. Anyway, I got this really good webcam, but I'm not really super satisfied with it because the image is not perfect. It's like, it's just a webcam. After all, it's the best webcam you can get, but it's still just a webcam, of course. So it's not like you're recording this with a professional camera or something, because that's what podcasts do, right? They have professional cameras and then they upload it to YouTube. Whereas in this case, because of the live stream, you need to have a camera that can process enough information and then stream it to the internet, right? So there's a limitation there. But I'm still fine with it. It's okay, it gets the message across. Looks great, yeah. I think it's all right. So during this live stream, I noticed I frequently mentioned the forest. And the reason the forest is so important is because forests have the most fertile soil. That tells you something. All renewal comes from forests and from forest people and from people who dwell in the forest. Now, the forest can be a metaphor too, right? A metaphor in the sense that you can be living in a city like New York City, but if you are a source of renewal, then the forest lives in you, see? Whereas the opposite would be to have the desert inside you. It turns out a lot of technologists have desert minds, meaning they don't really come up with anything new, they just run with what they already know. I went to this meetup today that was about design and technology, and the guy doing the talk was a designer, and he warned, it says, he interviewed 25 CEOs of big technology companies in this region, and he was shocked. He was shocked because when he found out what they're doing is, they really destroy creativity. They remove all creativity and they really focus on that technocratic optimization, maximization, and so on. It's not about creative effort anymore. It's really about optimizing, say, the ASML machines, optimizing them and perfecting the business model, looking for increasing profit. It is so ruthlessly focused on maximizing profits and maximizing efficiency. There's no room for creativity. But renewal doesn't come from technology. Renewal comes from the creative people, all right? So if you do away with the creative, you get a process of desertification that turns a community, a region, into a sort of wasteland because you have all these technology companies, but no life. And that's a danger. I didn't know I hated Christians. I support a sort of Christian revival in Europe. Have you thought of going more into politics? Yes, I was speaking about this earlier, that I have an idea for starting a new political party, but not to participate in national elections, but rather to participate only in the local elections and then vote against everything coming out of the capital. So imagine you have your people in local elections, they win some seats in their local colleges, in their municipalities and provinces, and then they use that political power, the local power, to always vote against what the national power wants. That way you can make it almost impossible for the national power to implement their strategies for the nation. And so since the national policy is really globalism, by fighting that war locally, you can start winning small battles against globalism, but repeatedly, over and over and over again, by always resisting, always making it more difficult for the globalist interest to be imposed on the people, by always using your local power to say, no, we are against this. We don't want this. We're not going to do this, right? Right. Freedom for employees will help a lot of this, and good, happy work circumstances. Yes. So the speaker I mentioned, he also suggested that it's more about collaboration, but trying to get more creative people into the technology scene, right? And so they can work together. But again, this need comes from the designers and the creatives, whereas the technologists don't seem to care. It's a different breed of people, different kinds of people. Would you lead a militia if it came to that? Would we all be militiamen is the real question. In the end, it is the sort of people who are guerrillas and militias and so on, who may be the force necessary to overthrow the globalist system. And so I mentioned the book The Forest Passage by Ernst Jünger. I keep mentioning it. And it explains also that a small number of outspoken individuals, the rebels, who manage to find each other and form a small elite together, even if they are small in number, they can be a grave threat to the higher powers, because a small elite of people, if they manage to stand up, will be able to transfer their wolfish nature onto the sheeple, the sheep people, the normies, turning the herd into a pack, turning the sheep herd into a wolf pack. And that is perhaps how it works in our time as well. We need to, for example, here on TikTok, have you found this woman, Based Blondie from Australia? Have you found What About It? MK What About It or so? Have you found these people? And have you found Groyer Nationalist, for example? Excellent videos, right? There are so many outspoken rebels, wolves, right? Promoting the creative nationalist movement. Basically, what we want is we want culture to emerge from ourselves again. And we want the world to be a representation of ourselves, of who we are, rather than this technocratic nightmare dystopia that we are now living through, right? So we see all these people on TikTok, young people in their 20s, they're rising up. They're standing up. They're speaking out about the situation in their countries. And that is how you bring down power, the globalist power, because these people are already transferring their qualities onto the masses. At some point, the herd stops being a herd and starts behaving like a pack, a wolf pack, right? And that's how you take down power. You devour them, basically. Right, look at Australia. Well, you have a lot of people there, like Blair Cottrell, Jacob Hersant, Joel Davis, Thomas Sewell, right? They've been banned from Twitter, X. Some of them have been arrested as well for attending all sorts of rallies, right? So, yeah, this inspires you, yeah. So that's the role I see for myself, as I try to find the stories to tell you that inspire you and basically carry over, the energy I feel onto others, right? Like I only started speaking 5 years ago. I told you, it's never too late for you to start speaking, right? If you feel like you've got enough things to talk about, right, then go and start transferring your qualities onto others, and that way transform the herd into more of a wolf pack or a lion pride or whatever you want it to be, right? And that way we start pushing back against power. It's literally the nightmare of the super rich that the people stop behaving as docile little lemmings, as lambs, right? Right, Blair Cottrell, yeah. You know what bothers me a little bit? I'm Dutch, right? So in the Netherlands, we don't really have characters like that, like Thomas Sewell, Blair Cottrell, Jacob Hersant. We don't really have people like that. I suppose I'm the odd duck out in the Dutch sphere over here. Um, we have some people, I think, who speak out against government policy, but they're just weird people. People with dreadlocks who are racially confused weirdos who, right? Maybe they all feel like controlled opposition to me anyway. Cottrell mentioned the Bataclan massacre. Yeah, it was horrible. I remember reading about the details of that massacre, and it's just far more extreme than anything the media have ever told you. Some men were castrated and forced to eat their own balls. Things like that. These terrorists are insane. They're totally mentally ill. I don't get this comment. I'm speaking out the whole time. I've been speaking out for almost 5 years. I lost almost a dozen TikTok accounts. I always came back. I'm not the one who's afraid. It's you. Wolvenraad. I don't know this one yet, but I'll look it up. I always thought Eva Vlaardingenbroek was a controlled opposition. I don't trust her at all. Right, so we need a bit of the Australian strength. You also see some of these people in South Africa, but it's almost as if the Netherlands has lost its strongest characters to the emigration, to the colonial emigration, right? And now we're stuck with this very docile population that may be very hard to wake up, but not impossible, right? So that's why I wanted to start doing more public speeches and see if I can then speak with a much louder voice and start transferring my energy onto other people. If I could find the right way to do it successfully, to mesmerize people, to inspire people, right? We could then get something going in the Netherlands, but I have to watch my words, you know. You have to watch your words when you start doing public speeches. They say what you said was a public statement, and therefore the laws are different. The laws apply differently if you have a closed meeting for friends and family and members, or versus being outside and having a public statement. The law is different, teach you differently in those two cases. What's my opinion on the drug trade in the Netherlands? I don't use drugs. I don't know anything about it, really. I think people who do drugs have a character flaw. They're just weak. Especially the ones smoking weed, because really what they're saying is they're depressed, they don't like their life, and they're willing to take a drug to make them pretend feel happy. You should be angry as hell if that's your life, man. You should be so angry. You should refuse to take those weed drugs to make you feel happy. You should demand a life that makes you really happy, right? You should be more aggressive. Right. Thierry Baudet of the Forum for Democracy is already extreme for Dutch standards, right? But even though he's like kind of an intellectual, highfalutin, classical music oriented man, right? Very knowledgeable. Even he can't get through the censorship smokescreen in the Netherlands. Yeah, weed sucks. Yeah, right. All right. I always notice that when I'm speaking for about an hour, I run out of things to say. So I've been speaking for 55 minutes. I'll slowly round it off to an hour or so, and then I'm gonna log off in 5 minutes or so. If is there something I want to tell you? Yeah. So you can subscribe to my newsletter on jmk.info, or fund me on buymeacoffee.com/JohannesMK, Or if you want my PayPal, it's paypal.me/thejmk. Wilders is also Zionist-controlled opposition. You know, it's the sad thing about countries like the Netherlands. We don't have anybody speaking up for our people. I think I always represent the native voice, the native interest. And that means I often go against the left because they're globalist, but I sometimes also go against the right when they are, for example, Zionists, and they don't really care about our people. They care about the different people. Yeah, I think so. Europeans are under American control. I always suggested, well, I know exactly what to do. The solution is Germany needs to ally with Russia for the resources and the power. And that way we would be able to resist American power, who would no longer have to do what they tell us to do. Best to be center? I don't know. I think it's best to be a far-right radical. Go against everything and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. There's a scene from the movie The Abyss where the woman is drowning, and then the guy slaps her face and says, "Fight, goddammit, bitch! Fight, 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 fight!" That's my favorite movie scene of all time. Fight, you bitch! Fight, fight, fight! We can win. We win by renewing ourselves and so undermining the whole power base of our enemies. Right, right. Did you hear that the Germans are thinking of sending their soldiers to Greenland to protect Greenland from the Americans? Now that is a very interesting development, because previously Olaf Scholz allowed the Anglo-Americans to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, and now all of a sudden the Germans are worried that the Americans might take Greenland. Hey, what's going on here? Something's brewing in the European circles. They are not happy with Trump's new geopolitical course of action. All right. Oh, France is thinking of sending military too. Well, that is a very interesting development. Things are maybe going somewhat in the right way. Turns out Greenland has a lot of gas fields and oil fields, but of course we need those. We Europeans own it anyway. It's part of Denmark. It's already part. It's like a territory already part of the European Union. As a member state territory, and so we need to keep that. We need to keep Greenland, because who knows, the treasure buried underneath central Greenland is ice now, but who knows, if we ever start digging underneath it, we'll find riches we've never seen before. This is ours, right? Greenland's resources are ours. The Vikings legally stole it. Now it's ours. Yeah, minerals. Yeah, someone mentions in Dutch that I keep trying to wake people up every day. Yeah, of course. It's a fire that drives me. It's not going to go out soon. Yeah, Germany can learn a lot from Russian culture too. Yeah, maybe vice versa. Yeah. Knowledge is power to the people. How will we communicate with news if the internet is wasted? We have pigeons. You can have postal pigeons. You can send your messages. Do you think Russia has... Yeah, well, Russia has its own Zionist puppets, of course. I mean, who knows? Maybe Putin is one of them. Fight locally, right? Strong Germany is not good for news, yeah. not good news for Eastern European countries. No, well, Eastern Europe has always been in this geographic trap, right? You're always stuck between the West and Russia. All right, I've been speaking for an hour. I notice always after an hour, I just run out of things to say. I lose my, my energy to keep talking about new things. And so I thought this was quite an interesting episode. I will upload it to my YouTube at The Great Johannes and to my newsletter at jmk.info, so you can review it or rewatch it there. And other than that, I wish you all good luck, right? Thank you for watching, and see you next week in English.